Ayo Dosunmu going into the season is one of the most underrated Bulls by the way a lot of you guys react to Ayo Dosunmu. In today's episode, we're going to talk about why this could be one of the biggest seasons of Ayo Dosunmu's career. Could end up in a pretty big contract for him at the end of it. We're going to talk about that. Plus, we're going to talk about 4 hot takes from Elias Schuster in regards to the Chicago Bulls season. We're going to get into all that and more right after this. What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host there, Hayes, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go ahead and get into this content today, y'all. And let's start off talking about Ayo Dosunmu. Ayo Dosunmu was one of the players that I did talk about yesterday in regards to the starting small forward battle. And as that's been happening a lot this offseason, at least on the YouTube side of things, is that almost every time Ayo Dosunmu's name comes up, there's a pretty large portion, at least that leave comments, that almost disregard Ayo Dosunmu and his season. And some even saying that the Bulls need to let Ayo Dosunmu go. And that's something that I've never really understood when you look at it, right? And you guys know, sometimes I can get caught up really in the weeds of analytics, right, when it comes down to it, not just box score stuff. But when you look at it, over the last 2 seasons, right, where I think that Ayo's kind of fallen into a role over the last 2 seasons. His first year, he was the backup point guard, right? We all know that. Eventually Lonzo Ball went down. He had to take over. He came into the season. The following season as a starting point guard, we found he's not a point guard. He's not a starting point guard. He's more of a guard/wing combo that can do a lot of things. So over the last 2 years, where his role has kind of been more streamlined now, at the end of the 2023-24 season, he was a starter and finished that season pretty strong in a backcourt with Coby White. He moved to a bench role last year, but averaged over 30 minutes. The shooting splits were down, right? And those things were there, but Ayo started showing signs of, getting that shooting together. And with the shoulder injury of Ayo Dosunmu, which actually dated back to the 2023-24 season that went undiagnosed and that they found with him, I expect that shooting, maybe the rhythm to come back to him. But when you look at it, over those last 2 years since Ayo's role has kind of been more streamlined, out of the Bulls, over the last season, the Bulls had 3 lineups with a positive plus minus. He was part of 2 of those lineups. The season before with that, the Bulls had 4 positive lineups. He was part of all 4 of that. What does that show? That when Ayo Dosunmu's on the basketball court, he makes the teammates around him better. He makes the game of basketball better for the Chicago Bulls. He has been one of the few players that impacts it in that way consistently when he's in the starting lineup. For example, last year, the Bulls had only 3 lineups that finished with a positive plus minus. One of those lineups was Josh Giddey, Lonzo Ball, Zach LaVine, Patrick Williams, and Nikola Vucevic that actually finished plus 12.1 with 70 possessions played. The other one was Josh Giddey, Ayo Dosunmu, Zach LaVine, Julian Phillips, and Nikola Vucevic, which played 117 possessions together and had a positive of plus 4.8. Wonder why we didn't go to that lineup a little bit more before Zach LaVine. Oh, well, because Ayo had the injury. And then you look at the other lineup. Josh Giddey, Coby White, Ayo Dosunmu, Matas Buzelis, Nikola Vucevic. Now, that lineup didn't play nearly as many possessions together, but positive 3.3. What does it all come down to? Ayo Dosunmu is part of the Bulls' better lineups. He just is. And in that, he plays a multitude of roles. Ayo Dosunmu has gone from the beginning of his career playing mostly point guard and 2 to now over the last 2 years playing mainly the 2 and the 3. And with Billy Donovan's propensity to play multi-guard lineups, 2, 3-guard lineups at times, Ayo Dosunmu's versatility in guarding those positions is legitimate and one of the reasons why it helps him out. So, and one of the things that, I'm more so talking about the people that hate on Ayo Dosunmu. The people are like, well, Hayes, is Ayo going to actually be able to play the 3? And I'll tell you, yes, in the modern NBA, he can play the 3. Again, you look at him and the players that we're talking about, Isaac Okoro, Kevin Huerter, and Ayo Dosunmu all have relatively around the same, as far as height, right? Isaac Okoro is also 6'5", Ayo Dosunmu 6'5". Now, Kevin Huerter's the tallest out of all those is 6'7", but we know he's not necessarily the strongest defender either. Now, this isn't even about Ayo in the starting small forward, because I think regardless if Ayo starts or not, he is going to be somebody that plays a lot of minutes for Billy Donovan. he has become one of those players for Billy Donovan and kind of replace the Alex Caruso role. Am I saying that he impacts defense as much as Alex Caruso at this point of his career? No, but he's kind of assumed that role to where because he can play and he's trusted to play multiple positions by Billy Donovan and can guard those positions pretty damn well, it has freed up Billy Donovan to really still play him a lot of minutes because of that. And so, this all goes into a season in a situation where Ayo is drastically underpaid per his production. Now, we can talk all day about what that money looks like for him, but when you look at it right now, he's making $7.5 million. The league average is $13.9 million. He's going to be making less than some rookies on this contract this season. So there's no doubt about it that he is going to be getting a pay raise and an increase in several areas. We've talked about Ayo and his numbers as a starter. His numbers as starters last year were crazy. Actually, for the last 2 years, they've been crazy. Last season, as a starter for Ayo Dosunmu, 32 minutes played, 14 points, 5 assists, 1.3 steals, 3.3 rebounds. He does that, right? Then when you flip that and look at the 2023-24 season, and what a lot of people at that time looked at as his breakout season, he started 37 games, averaged 15 points, 41% shooting from three, 50% shooting from the field, 4.5 assists, 3.5 rebounds, and over 1.1 steals a game again. Ayo Dosunmu is one of the most unique skill-setted players on the Chicago Bulls team. He just is. When you also look at the fact, something that's been underrated about Ayo Dosunmu's game is that while he's not the same scorer he was looked at in college, the way that he creates off assists, last year, for example, for the Chicago Bulls, he created 11.1 points off assists per game. So again, this is another guy that has shown in this more up-tempo style, like his passing in transition has always been one of his best skills, and the more up-tempo style plays into that. You look at the Chicago Bulls as well, who did increase their pace in 2023-24, not to the rate they did the following season, but 7.5 points generated off assists. When you play an up-tempo style, Ayo Dosunmu and his ability to have low turnovers plus steals and assists and the points generated off those assists puts him in a really, really good place, right? So I think Ayo, a lot of people have talked about Ayo being potentially a player that can be poised for a breakout. Me and Pat over on Locked on Bulls have talked about Ayo a couple of times, and Pat has said that he wants Ayo in, six man of the year type talks this year. And we'll see if he gets into that. Again, we'll see what his role ends up being. But when you look at it, do-it-all player, right, that can guard multiple positions. Ayo can guard the 1, 2, and 3. And he can play the 1, 2, or 3. I think now he's kind of settled in, especially with this team and the roster makeup. It's going to be more 2 and 3 than anything for Ayo Dosunmu. And don't overlook the fact that Billy Donovan may play him some as a small ball 4. But with that said, that's not ideal. But with that said, I do think you have to look at those things for Ayo. Now, for people that are asking, when you look at the point differential for Ayo Dosunmu when playing these other positions, the guard has still been his best. He still has a plus point differential of 1.5 when playing the guard. And keep in mind, a lot of his time where the Bulls weren't necessarily playing the best, right? And that point differential of playing small forward hasn't quite caught up to what the on ball defense is. And maybe that changes again. We'll see what happens there. But I think ultimately, this just shows that Ayo he's going to have a role on this team. No question, no doubt about that. He is an underpaid player in this league per the production that he gives. And secondly, when you look at players that can break out, like Ayo in the sense that now his shoulder's fully healthy. If those shooting splits that he did as a starter for the last 2 years are something that he can maintain for an entirety of the season, I mean, that speaks for itself. If you can shoot over 50% from the field, right? Which, again, there are times where he has done that as a player on top of that, right? So, there's no reason to doubt what Ayo Dosunmu brings. Now, it's a specialized role, no doubt there, right? And I think when you look at Ayo, it depends on, he can be a starter, depending on what your starting lineup is and what you need in that starting lineup. He can come off the bench, absolutely. And I think, having some form of a consistent scorer off the bench is going to be something this Bulls team does search for over the course of the season. But Ayo is a player that, when you look at the raw numbers and analytics of it all, he's a player that offers a lot for the Chicago Bulls. He's also one of the players as well that has a really nice balance between unassisted shots and assisted shots, meaning that he can be a ball handler for you, but also he does benefit from playing out there with other creators. And that's the type of game he has. Ayo Dosunmu is the Swiss Army knife for this Chicago Bulls team. He just is. He's the closest thing that we have to one of those players right now. Now, I think Isaac Okoro can be that to a degree, right? I think that's absolutely, I think as Modest grows, he's going to be one of those players. I think all these things play into just this thing that Ayo is another player, like I talked about Kevin Huerter and how connective he was. The connectivity that Ayo Dosunmu brings on offense and defense for the Chicago Bulls team is period. I mean, you just can't take away from it. The numbers scream out at you. They back that up. And I also think when you look at, and shout out to Vaughn who pointed this out, like, for the people that like are heralding Isaac Okoro coming to this team, namely C-Red Fred. Shout out to C-Red Fred. Love him. C-Red Fred's a good dude. I've been listening to him literally since I was like 15 years old. But to a guy like C-Red Fred who said that Isaac Okoro can end up being one of the Bulls' best trades, Ayo has been better than Ayo every year of their career, every single year. And so, Ayo has been better than Isaac Okoro every single year, if I said that correctly. Old man brain sometimes gets to me. But put some respect on Ayo's name. Now, I think that when it comes down to his play this season, it's a lot's going to be based off, how he does play for that contract. And, when you look at players that typically play around what he does in the modern NBA, you're looking at about 16 to 18 million at a minimum. And we'll see what ends up shaking out with that one. But Ayo has a really good chance to not only have his role, thrive in that role, but really earn himself a nice future and to get himself some stability here with Chicago, again, playing for his hometown team. So we'll see how that all shakes out. You guys can let me know how you feel on that down below. But let's get into this. I want to get into this article from Elias Schuster in regards to 4 Bulls hot takes. And some of these are hotter than others. You guys know when we get into like articles on hot takes, I'll give you my take on it. His first one that he had here is Josh Giddey is an all-star reserve, right? And I think that this is really good. He points out here that, of course, his numbers in the 20 games at post-All-Star break, 20 points, 10 rebounds, 9.3 assists, right? Shooting over 50% from the field, 45% from three-point range. Also 1.5 steals per game, right? Which it was really good to see that. But when you look at the Josh Giddey and the potential of being an all-star in any shape, form, or fashion, whether it's a starter or reserve, that is absolutely what the Bulls are hoping for when they signed him to the deal that they signed him to, right? You hope that ability to fill up the stat sheet ends up translating for him in a season that he does it in your jersey. And I would say this, the post-All-Star break numbers for Josh Giddey would absolutely make him an all-star. I've said it before. Those numbers, if he does that for a full season, we're not even talking about an all-star. Those are going to be getting some MVP level votes. And I'm not saying that he'll get first place votes, but I'm saying he'll get some third and fourth place votes. Absolutely, right? And so while those post All-Star break numbers are unlikely that he's going to repeat those again because of what that is, how close can he get to that? Can it be 18, 8, and 8? How close does that get you? Can it be 18, 10, and 9? How close does that get you? Can he average a triple-double? Even if it's 17, 10, and 10, averaging a triple-double would probably get you there, right? So I think that we've seen all-star caliber play from Josh Giddey. The question now becomes about it. How much can he do that over the entirety of a full season? And if he can, how does that then translate to the voters, right? And then the Bulls also have to win over that standpoint in time. But we've seen all-star, especially the reserves, come from teams that aren't necessarily hugely have huge win differentials or anything like that. So we'll see. But I think that it's a take definitely from Elias Schuster. And I do think that let's see if he can get there. If Josh Giddey does get there and he does get named as an all-star reserve this season, the first year of this new long-term deal with the Chicago Bulls, best believe the Giddy fans that are here, shout out to y'all, shout out to my Aussies, they're going to be loud, real loud, and deservedly so if that ends up being the case. And I would love to see what the Josh Giddey haters at that point do when it comes down to it. But another a bold prediction for this season or hot take for this season that Elias Schuster had, Coby White will get traded. That's the next one that he had here. He said that you can likely claim this take isn't hot enough. Coby's been in trade rumors for quite some time, and we all know he is headed into the final year of a contract. However, I argue that this is Bulls front office actually trading a player like White will be pretty darn shocking. Here's the thing. We've talked about this ad nauseum. Korn had a voicemail on it not too long ago about the proposition of the Chicago Bulls trading Coby White and what that then could look like for this Bulls team. What does that end up resulting in for this Bulls team? And, I'm somebody that when a player's been on your team and the role has changed as much as it has for Coby White, and he does the things that he does where he does play good basketball, and if he takes his game another step further, one could say, all right, either you pay him $30 million, or let's say that Coby does put up the 25 and 5 that I talked about before. Or do you take advantage then of a hot trade market, potentially move him and get more assets and stack? If I believe that the Bulls were a team that had the appetite to stack draft picks and then build organically that way, as far as, hey, we're going to be bad for a while, I just don't trust that. This is a team that wants to compete. This is a team that wants to fight for the play-in and for the playoffs. And because of that, I don't necessarily see them trading Coby White. Now, I'm not going to say that it's outside the realm of possibility. I've said this with everyone, every player that has ever been a Chicago Bull. There is a price, and there is a chance that a team calls with a deal that AK's like, listen, I want Coby here, but this is a deal that I feel like we can't miss on. Now, one could say that the Bulls got offered that with Zach LaVine and the Knicks when the Knicks offered, I believe it was 3 unprotected first-round picks, or maybe it was 2 unprotected. One of them were protected. RJ Barrett, and I can't remember the other player that ended up being. Now it's been like 3 years since that trade. And they looked at that and said, hey, yeah, no, we good. And then tried to start trading him the year later, and none of the offers ever matched that one, right? So we've seen this front office kind of balk at a high trade value before, but the question now becomes about what the value ends up being and the long-term fit with Josh Giddey. Now that Josh Giddey's locked in, I think that's a thing. And that's what the Bulls rightfully so should be monitoring over the course of this season, is the fit with Josh Giddey and how confident that they feel that fit is going to be maintained. And when you're paying over $30 million for a player, reportedly that's what they want, you should absolutely look at that and weigh everything that goes on in that. But let's move on to the next one. I think this may be the hottest take that he has. Noa Essengue plays 72 games. This is the next hot take for the Chicago Bulls. And here's what I'll say on this one, right? Is that if this was a different, like, for example, if we had, I don't even want to name a coach specifically, because then people are like, can we get him? Modest Buzelis played 80 games last season. But I think every Bulls fan will let you know, while he did check in to 80 games last year, so he only technically didn't play in 2 out of the 82, we know that all those games weren't meaningful minutes, right? We know that that's the case. You look at it, the first month of the season, he averaged 5.6 minutes per game, but he checked in to just about every game then, right? And then even in the month of November, while he averaged 12.9 minutes per game, there were a lot of games with 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 4 minutes, right? And so those weren't really meaningful games either. So I think when you factor that point in, right, and it's like, it's not saying that all 72 games are going to be meaningful. There's a chance for that. But I think it comes down to how well does Noa Essengue look above the level of competition in the G League? Now, there's something to be said that Noah could actually gain from developing in the G League because of Yuki Kawamura being there and having a point guard that can get you the damn ball, right? On lobs, those other things where you are acclimating to the physicality of the NBA. I think that's going to be a really big thing, and how much Billy Donovan looks at Noa Essengue in his defense. I think if Patrick Williams comes in to the season and Billy Donovan trusts him to have a role, and I'm not saying that a major role, but trust his defense, I think that's going to make it even harder. If Patrick Williams comes into another season where he's disappointing offensively and the defense takes a slide like it did last year, I think that does open the door for even a raw prospect like Noa Essengue to potentially get in the game for the Chicago Bulls. And we'll see. I mean, he has, for his credit, he's been playing against grown men for 2 years, even though he's only 18 years old. And because of that, we'll see. He did get, he played against the Portland Trailblazers in the 2024-25 preseason, and he scored 20 points and had 8 rebounds. So I think a lot's going to come down to training camp and how far Noa Essengue looks above. Part of the reason he did not play in Eurobasket is because he wanted to stay working out here, wanted to stay working with the trainers, wanted to get used to the rigors of NBA basketball. And we'll see. So Modest Buzelis, who played 80 games last year, does that give Billy Donovan a more of an inkling to say, maybe we should go ahead and play this guy a little bit more? We shall see. I wouldn't mind if it happens. Next up, and the last one is that the Bulls sneak into the playoffs as the 7th seed. Man, listen, if the Bulls do, and keep in mind, this kind of aligns with what I've talked about. I've said before that I think that this Bulls team can be at 500 or above this season. I think that there's a chance for that, right? And there is a chance, and what Elias Schuster talks about here, he says this: there's one team that turns heads every season, and why can't that be the Chicago Bulls? The Eastern Conference is as wide open as it's ever been after Achilles injuries to both Jason Tatum and Tyrese Halliburton. Both teams still expect to field competitive teams, but we all know the impact that losing your best player can have. More notably, who in the Eastern Conference is a proven commodity? The Cavaliers, Bucks, and Knicks have superstars to lean on, but the first two have repeatedly fizzled in the playoffs, while the latter has swapped out head coaches. The Pistons, Magic, and Hawks are intriguing up-and-coming squads, yet they still have to prove that they can stay healthy consistently and compete for the postseason. As the rest of the conference, they're either outright tanking or retooling around youth, like Chicago. And I would say this, after all the hate, not only I say hate, after all the pessimism around being a Chicago Bulls fan for the last few years, if this team were to have a season, let's just say two of these things come true. Let's say Josh Giddey is named as an all-star, even if it is as a reserve, and the Bulls make the playoffs, outright the playoffs. I'm not mad at that. I'm not going to lie to y'all. I'm not mad at that. Like, I'm not mad if the Bulls end up making the 7th seed. I'm not mad at that at all, right? That would be a really nice palate cleanser of a season for a team that so many people doubt what they can end up being. And for some, it would be exactly what they need to happen with this Bulls team before they go and commit more money to players like Coby White and lock themselves in further. So I think this is a solid list from Elias Schuster, but I want to flip this now on you guys. Over the weekend, we do mailbag episodes. I want to hear from you guys on your hottest Bulls takes, whether it's good takes, ends up in something positive for the Bulls, or it's bad, as far as maybe the Bulls fizzle out and you have them being one of the worst teams in the Eastern Conference. I want to hear from you guys on this one. The number to do that is 773-270-2799. Again, call in. You guys are opinionated. Witten is a coward. He doesn't like to leave voicemails. It's a little shot to get him motivated. But that's my time for today, guys. Make sure you guys are following us at Bulls Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns. bullscentralpod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, but that is thanks to you, lovely and beautiful people. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See you right if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Breakout Media.